Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are back with the creator of 5 Steps to Alignment. We are talking about Haley Carbajal. She joins us here once again live from beautiful Flagstaff, Arizona, to talk more about the work she does on the spiritual side. Yes, and attracting and mentoring and coaching. And as an intuitive, she, has been spiritually awakened and helping others out there, taking that control in their lives and helping them in so many different ways. So living your purpose. I know that's one of your biggest beliefs. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, Jill. And actually, just because you said something about, talking about spirituality, and a lot of people think spirituality is something separate from you, when actually spirituality is part of the intertwined fabric of life. You have a spirit, you have a soul, you have an existence, you have an awareness, you have an understanding that either life is happening to you, which we need to reframe that, or that life is happening for you. And just that awareness that you are aware of the world that's going around you, and the world that you have and relationships that you have around you already implies that there is a spirit there. So spirituality is not some hokey BS woo woo anything. It's actually part of the fabric that creates the full alignment, embodiment, or full even blanket of life. It's the threads that create the blanket of life. So it's not BS. If you're aware that things are happening to you, you are a spirit, and that should be enough. Yeah, because I don't want to repeat myself.
It's okay. Thank you so much. For those new timers today, here's Haley. I mean, she just kind of gave her a little introduction about who she is, what she does. And for today, what else did you want to make sure we start off with?
Yeah, well, so for people, I just want to remind everybody, just in case they're new time listeners, that I help the spiritually awakened overcome fear, stagnation, or lack of direction in their lives so that they can vibrationally align to their higher calling or soul's purpose. And I know that when you first spiritually awaken, it comes in where you kind of realize, when you awaken and realize what's actually going on in the world and who you really are. Sometimes it can seem really dark, because first we need to awaken to the darkness that is around us in order to transmute it and transcend it into light. But just because there are aspects of the world that's dark, it doesn't mean that the world in of itself is dark, right? Actually, the light cannot survive without the darkness, and back and forth, right? The dark cannot survive without the light, and
True.
it's cohesive. And truthfully, if you think about it, like, and we'll get into the topic that I wanted to discuss, but if you think about it, the universe, the energy, the chi, the shakti, whatever it is, it just is. It just is. It is only our interpretation, filtered through our ego, filtered through our moral compass and our belief systems, that define something as light or dark. If you think about Star Wars, for an example, the Force is just the Force. That's it. It's how the Jedis or the Siths are using the Force that define it as dark or light, good or bad.
Yeah.
The universe doesn't care. The energy doesn't care how you use it. It's more about, what are your intentions? What are you in alignment with? And so a higher level of consciousness can look at even the darkest. I'm telling you, I'm awakened to the darkest parts of what goes on in this reality. If you fully understand that that contrast even serves, or that darkness even serves a higher purpose or a higher calling or a higher benefit, then you find freedom in letting it all go. Not to say, if you don't feel moved by changing that or doing something to change that you shouldn't. If that's your passion, then absolutely follow that. But you're not, if the more that we focus on what's not working and what's wrong and what's dark, the more we're going to feed that, which is the opposite of what light workers, star seeds, and alchemists want. it comes into our awareness, not to fear it, because again, that's false evidence appearing real. But when it comes into our awareness, already it's not going to blindside us because we're aware of it. And therefore, we can move through it intelligently. Now, I really wanted to speak to why most feel lost. And the reason why most feel lost is because they are following other people's truths. Now, granted, I understand that I just shared my perspective, right? The whole thing about this reality is everything is subjective, even if we try to be as objective as possible, which I fully believe in observation, being objective, using discernment, looking at all the facts, tuning into the infinite energy and language and information that's around you, and then making the highest and best decision, right? But I really wanted to talk today about people unconsciously, individuals unconsciously living other people's truths. And that's why a lot suffer, because they say, oh, this person said this, and so because that resonated in truth, I'm going to live that. When in reality, we do have to do that intellectual shopping, right? Fine, that resonates with me. I really like that. I'm going to use that, try that on. And if it doesn't work, like something like clothing that doesn't fit quite right, we just let it go. It's not a big deal, right? Or we grab this, we say, I really liked that, but that didn't really work for me as well as I thought, and so on and so forth, right? So we put too much weight into what other people are saying, and we don't trust our inner guidance. Now, there's reasons why these threads or these seeds of truth come into our reality for us to fully comprehend, understand, and embody. But even then, because you are such a unique spirit, you are meant to adopt your own definition to what it is that you're experiencing, right? That's why a lot of leaders who built success in their lives, or a lot of spiritual gurus out there, most of them all say the same thing. It's all just in a different language or through a different tweaked perspective. And there are some whole unwavering truths in this reality, but it's not meant for you to follow like a soldier and say, this person said this, so I'm going to follow. It is meant for you to fully comprehend and embody so that you start living that in your behavior and your thought patterns and in your way of being. But then you find your own way of expressing it. You find your own truth in that resonance. Because if you're just following something, and I love Ed Milet. Ed Milet has been a huge, huge, I honestly want to almost say savior in my life. But even just because Ed Milet says something doesn't mean that's his interpretation of the truth. And so you take what resonates and then adopt it to be your own. So I understand that for most, it's really hard or challenging to listen to that inner voice. And a lot of that comes from, not having a level of self-trust, because you haven't been able to trust yourself in the past. You've maybe made decisions that weren't the best, or you didn't listen to that gut instinct, right? We've all been there. I've done that. Lord knows I've done that, right? We've been programmed not to trust our inner judgment. A lot of us were raised on fear-based beliefs. Will be really careful what decision you make, because the decision that you make could be a bad one, right? So then we're actually making decisions out of fear when we're told not to be afraid. You know what I'm saying? It's very contradictory. So we've been kind of, whether it be on purpose or not on purpose, doesn't matter. That's for you to define. But we've been taught not to necessarily trust that inner voice. And most of us, because of all of the external stimulus in our lives, like work, traffic, food, cooking, kids, we don't have time in the turbulence of our lives to actually sit down and meditate. And then when we do, we're like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong because I'm supposed to be peaceful.
I feel like I'm supposed to be, yeah,
Well, let me actually, so then while we're here, I love myth busting meditation. I love myth busting meditation. So even the most, and I would absolutely consider myself an advanced meditator. I can meditate for 3 hours every day, all day, no problem. I used to essentially meditate for a living when I was a massage therapist, and then
Yeah.
when I upgraded to an energy healer. So absolutely, I would say I'm an advanced meditator. Even the most advanced meditators still have turbulent thoughts sometimes, because the more chaotic and the more turbulent life is, or what I like to call the external reality is, the more the brain needs time to process what's going on. So that's why if you haven't meditated, let's just be generous and say in 30 days, but I know most of us go years or even decades without meditating, right? You have to give yourself the grace, because the only time your brain gets to rest is when you sleep. And sometimes most of us don't get good sleep, or we don't have enough time to actually fully
Mm-hmm.
sleep, right? So meditation, and I'm going to go into more of it in just a second, but just because you're experiencing, very chaotic or maybe even stressful or anxious thoughts when you attempt to meditate, if you just look at it as this is the brain's way of processing so that I can move past this and actually meditate, then it gives you a sense of freedom, because it's like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with the skill of meditating. This is just the processing required that the brain requires, right? Now, the second thing about meditation and your mind being still, right? Everybody talks about stillness, and it is true. There is a level of stillness when you meditate, but the brain never stops thinking. You're always connected to something. The difference is that what you are connecting to is bringing you that peace instead of that anxiousness, right? Because if your brain's not working, if your brain's not visualizing something, connecting to something, or thinking of something, then you're flatlining. It's just the truth. Even
Mm-hmm.
at delta brainwave, when you're deep asleep, your brain is still working. It's still doing something, right? So when you realize that even in meditation, no matter if it's turbulent or super Buddha level peaceful, you're still connecting to something anyway. That also gives the space of freedom and grace so that you could just kind of play around with it. Now, I do personally believe that meditation is a key, essential part of a healthy mind, of a healthy life, of a balanced life. I don't think there's ifs, ands, or buts around it. But I do know that, and I would love to gift this to the audience. If you're somebody who really struggles with meditation, but you know that it would benefit you, and you've tried the sitting down, you've tried the guided meditations, you've tried laying down, and that's not working, that's okay. Again, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you, okay? Your nervous system is more familiar with the movement, with doing something physically stimulating, right? That's normal in a very busy life. So things like going in a rocking chair and just kind of listening to the thoughts without attaching any meaning to them, or sometimes the walks are really helpful, like a walking meditation where it's like you're just being present with, the sounds around you, or you're present with the colors around you, all of those things. And there's a lot of science to say too. I forget her name. She was interviewed with Ed Milet, but even she has said that usually within 7 seconds, even with a practiced individual,
Yeah.
within 7 seconds, our brain will always go somewhere else. So if you realize that that's actually a normal habitual program of the brain, then when you're looking at the trees and all of a sudden you're thinking about having to make dinner, it's not like a slap on the hand. I've been doing
Yeah.
something. It's a natural part of the brain. And so then you just, however feels most or natural and organic to you, you just say, thank you for that. But right now I'm going to bring my attention back to the trees. right? So doing something stimulating, even fidgeting, like sometimes I have my crystal with me, even fidgeting with something in your fingers while you're meditating, that helps too. Especially if you're used to very stimulus life. But again, bringing it back full circle, it is so important for you to truly discover what works for you, because for some people, affirmations work amazingly. There's people who would go by affirmations, but I know for me, affirmations haven't always been effective. And in fact, they feel incongruent because it's like, who are you trying to convince when you're
Yeah.
saying these affirmations, right? But for others, it does work. So Bashar has channeled that you have your own current in the universe. That's why what works for others what works for some doesn't work for others. What
Hmm.
might work for your closest friend or even somebody super vibrationally aligned with you, which is usually your spouse or a close friend, what might work for them doesn't mean it always works for you. And that's why not only is that discernment so important and that mind of observation, but finding what works for you. And instead of looking at it, because again, how are you going to define that? This just dropped in. It's like, how are you going to define that? Are you going to define that as work? Like, oh man, it's not in a plan laid out for me. Like, hello, we'd all like that. Okay. It doesn't work that way. But giving yourself the opportunity to look at it through a new definition or a new meaning of, this is a way for me to be creative. This is a way
Hmm.
for me to discover myself, right? And not everybody's, necessarily turned on by that, but it's like, if you don't put that effort into you, then there is nothing in this external reality that's going to make you happy. Like, that is a bottom line. You have to go within. Everything is within. Um, I live by this saying that for every physical manifestation of something, there's an ethereal reason. This actually popped in when we had our conversation before we started live, when you said that you were feeling better, right? Anytime that that I get sick or I get a cold or something happens, the physical manifestation is having a cold, right? And then the ethereal reason is that it's a physical upgrade, right? It is an actual physical 3D upgrade. When somebody cuts you off in traffic, the 3D is like they just cut you off, but the higher vibrational meaning or the ethereal meaning is more than likely that it was a chance for you to come back to the present moment, check in, and just come back. I fully believe that for every physical manifestation of something, anything, there's always an ethereal reason.
Well, the reason today I'm feeling better, I know the sickness is like getting out of my body, but there's something about when you are sick. I just gotta bring this up where, do you know, okay, someone like you might understand. Do you know when you're sick and there's just like a fuzzy, I don't know if it's a taste. It's like a fuzzy vibration of a taste. It's like when I'm sick, I know I'm sick because I feel or I smell this like staticky, like do you have anything, do you know anything what I'm talking about? Do
I
you get
do,
this staticky
absolutely.
sense of being or what? Right? And I think, well, it's so weird. It's like a spirit has overcome my body and I'm tasting static or I'm tasting it's just so bizarre. And I always wonder. I think spiritually, I'm like, did like a sick entity come into me like a ghost? Is this why I'm sick? Because it feels staticky. It's just weird. It's a weird
So
question.
that answer is different for each individual
Okay.
because it depends on what you're playing with, right? It absolutely depends on what you're playing with. For some, it can be, see, that's why it's like a case by case or individual by individual. This is your level of discernment, right? Apply your discernment always. Um, But for some, it could be that. For others, and the way I always perceive it for me is that this is the physical upgrade required in order for me to get to my next level. This is like a physical purging because you literally, why is the body secreting fluids in your from your nose, from your lungs, right? To get rid of the virus. So why not, or the sickness or whatever. So why wouldn't that also mean that all of the dead cells or dead DNA coatings and things like that, why wouldn't those also be in there
Yeah.
secreting and letting go so that you can physically upgrade? Because our body is upgrading all the time. Like, don't we have some crazy, like we have new skin in like 18 months or something like that? So like, why wouldn't the sickness or the physical
Okay.
illness be an actual upgrade of you, and it's releasing all of the old chemicals that are no longer congruent, vibrationally aligned with where you're going?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Okay.
just love
Thank you.
that.
Thank you for that. All right.
But yeah, it's
That's
always comfortable. And that's the thing too. People perceive that transformation is like this super airy fairy rainbows and butterflies, I am in bliss
mm,
experience, and I can tell you it's not. That is what it feels like to be on the other side of transformation, when you can look back, know that you made it, and you can find the beauty in it. But actual transformation looks like crying yourself to sleep. Actual transformation looks like doubting yourself so much, doubting whether you want to continue. And I mean continue. Transformation looks like irritability and sadness and grief, and sometimes not knowing who you are anymore.
hmm
That's what actual transformation feels like. So, it goes back to finding your own definitions. What is, and I always like to connect to what is the highest truth about what I'm going through. So when I've had moments where, I have to go into my room and close my closet door and bring a thing of tissues with me because I'm upset, with the kids, I don't want necessarily the kids to see me that way and things like that. I know that even though it's gut-wrenchingly painful, I know that there's a higher purpose to the pain that I'm going through. And the reason why I receive that higher understanding is because when I put that intention out there, my reticular activating system is open to seeing and identifying that truth. If I said, oh, I'm suffering and I'm miserable because my life sucks and I'm right, then
hmm
that's what you're going to perceive because you can't think beyond what you
True.
feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I'm going through this gut wrenching,
Ugh.
like I'm being broken apart pain because there's something mighty on the other side for me, then you'll be able to perceive that, even if it's not in that exact moment, because I can tell you normally it's not ever in that exact moment, but it is later after the emotional flushing is done. And then you can see and be like, wow, that really had a higher purpose. But again, if I want anybody, and we have dropped a
Mm.
lot of nuggets in this conversation to
I
make
know.
it
I
so
know.
for people to take with them.
Mm.
But the my real intent for this conversation and starting off was that I want everybody to realize that it's in order for them to find that happiness that they see others experience, they must have their own truths about reality, and they must let go of what their parents have said, about what teachers have said, about what even some mentors have said. I've had to do that. That wasn't easy. Um, and just what society has said or what the rule book is. You're here to create your own rule book and set it up so that you win.
Don't we all want to win?
Yeah. Winning or not winning is a matter of choice. Because let me tell you, and I'll keep this brief because I know we're almost out of time. When I failed 208
Ah,
times,
I remember this. Yep.
I could have easily been like, I'm losing, I'm losing, I'm losing. And on paper, financially, I was absolutely losing, right? But in reality, long-term gains, I was absolutely winning. And that's what you have to focus on, because even if it feels like you're losing in the moment right now, everything is happening for you to either move you
Mm-hmm.
in the direction that you want, or to move you to wake up so that you can move in the direction that you want. So either way, even in the contrast or the darkness or the density, right? It's amazing how this is all kind of intertwined and circled right around.
So
It's
true.
still happening for you, but are you going to define it that way?
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, you got to, I'm talking my own personal thing. All right. Now, yeah. We got to take our accountability too. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh,
Yeah,
Haley. So
yeah.
what
And
happens
that's
after the show? What do you do the rest of the day? What do you have on tap? Just curious, since we never get to talk.
Yeah. So I have a live Q&A with my more one-to-one clients. Those ones they get to participate in group and one-to-one, so that they're still connected to a community of people that speak the same language as them, because this
Okay.
spiritual awakening can be a very lonely experience. And then I have my Patreon live workshop this week, and another live Q&A, and then I have a Facebook live, or I'm sorry, an Instagram live that I'm doing on Thursday at 3:30 Pacific Standard Time.
Awesome. So you're a busy girl today, like
Yeah.
almost every day, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
tell us
that's
about Patreon too before we go.
Yeah, so Patreon is the opportunity not only for you to get a taste of what I do and how I can specifically help you, but it is also an opportunity to be a part of a community, because I really fully believe in that. Like, you are like, I'm going to butcher this quote. You know what I'm trying to say, that you are most like the 5 people that you spend the most time with, right?
Yeah.
And so it's so important to be immersed in a community where you feel seen, where you feel heard, where you can speak foreign language, quote unquote, conversations, consciousness foreign, conversations with people who will actually understand. And, sometimes the best question asked is the one that you didn't even ask. Right. So like in a live Q&A with a group of people, maybe you weren't brave enough or didn't feel strong enough to ask that question, but then somebody else asked that, and it was the exact answer that you needed, right? So Patreon, I have a live workshop, a live 90-minute workshop coming up this week. And then following that is the next Thursday is the energy healing. And
Yeah.
then the Thursday after that is the live Q&A. And that's like what I would call microwave coaching, microwave mentorship, where it's like you have a question and it's like a little like on the
Yeah.
spot, let's do it.
Well, thank you for being here again, Haley. Tell us how we can reach you.
5stepstoalignment.com. And that's spelled out FIV.
FIV.
Yes, thank you for that, Jill.
Thank you so much, Haley. Have a great day. Good luck with all of your sessions. And obviously, we'll talk again next week. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcasts on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.